Welcome to this presentation on to what extent can UDL support the development of reading comprehension skills for ELD learners in primary school. I would like to start by acknowledging the Warrukaba and Bindal people as the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we will examine several academic papers investigating the use of UDL in the classroom and how it may support EALD learners to better comprehend text. My interest in this topic began while teaching a literacy class using the PLD literacy learning program in a local primary school. During class, I noticed that even though some students could code and decode text, they were unable to explain the meaning or what was happening in the text. I believed this lack of reading comprehension was due to a disconnect between the students, who were mainly ELD First Nation children, and the subject matter of what they were reading. The first paper for discussion was drawn from Primary English Teachers Association of Australia's website, Teaching EALD Learners in Australian Classrooms. It gives insight on the challenges faced by students who speak Aboriginal or Torres Strait Creole. The paper depicts EALD learners and how to identify them in our classrooms. The paper suggests that First Nation people were not originally recognised as EALD learners, and that this led to the students being subjected to unsuitable instructional methodologies. The paper called to recognise the culture and languages of origins of ELD students and use bilingual or bidialectal learning in a way that they can understand. The paper encourages the use of scaffolding to establish a relationship between language, learning and thinking in a collaborative classroom where students are actively participating and creating their learning experience. While the article recommends the necessity of changing instructional methods, they also implore the use of UDL to provide multiple means of engagement and representation to support EALD students. The second paper, Universal Design for Learning Cognitive Theories into Practice for Facilitating Comprehension and Early Literacy, advocates the use of UDL in the classroom to enhance children's reading and comprehension connections. The author proclaims the importance of reading comprehension by describing it as the ultimate goal of all reading. The paper suggests a model of literacy connections leading to comprehension, text to text, text to self, and text to the world that incorporates all four UDL principles leading to comprehension. The paper suggests several teaching strategies to promote the UDL model in the classroom. The author presents the need to create a motivating literacy curriculum to eliminate barriers to learning by using UDL. The author also suggests the success in using UDL can be limited by classroom space, shortage of trained staff, materials and funding for new technology, and inflexible curriculum. The third research article, Teachers' Confidence to Implement Principles, Guidelines and Checkpoints of Universal Design for Learning, addresses the concerns of Brand and Dalton and examines teachers' abilities to use UDL in the classroom. This article acknowledges the close association now held between ACARA and UDL. CAP examined the confidence of primary and secondary school teachers to understand and adopt the 3 principles, 9 guidelines and 31 checkpoints of UDL. While teachers were confident in the first 2 principles of UDL, they were not confident in the third principle in how to provide students with multiple ways of engaging in the learning process. This is of a concern when supporting ELD students, as the first 2 papers suggested that students' engagement and motivation was essential for successful learning. The paper warns that the use of UDL requires great care and training than originally thought. The fourth paper, Making Written Text for Learning More Accessible, Easy to Read and Universal Design, discusses the importance of the ability to read to live in modern society and draws links to the country's economic success to the literacy of its people. The purpose of their research was to strengthen reading comprehension skills of students by using UDL in the classroom. This paper also encountered students having difficulties with an inferential and critical comprehension, like the students in my practicum class. There are several data collection techniques used, such as questionnaires and surveys, with the research focused on observing the teacher and perceptions of their students' reading comprehension and the students' attitude towards learning. The research confirmed the lack of student motivation and interest in relation to reading and its comprehension, with some correlation to the traditional didactic style of instruction. In this study, teachers were aware of the lack of reading comprehension and agreed there was a need to improve pedagogical studies, but there was a lack of motivation by the teachers to implement them. Limitations were also suggested in the uptake of UDL as scarce economic resources and lack of support. The success, however, of the implementation of UDL principles into the classroom to improve comprehension was evident. The fifth and final paper, exploring the impacts of universal design for learning on reading and comprehension, a systematic review of literature, is a study of 7 empirical papers measuring the success of the implementation of UDL in improving reading comprehension. The paper clearly outlines the relationship between UDL and reading comprehension by instigating a motivated and goal-oriented student body. This study employed a systematic literature review to ensure no bias. The study suggested a marked improvement in the use of UDL-aligned strategies in allowing multiple ways to access, engage, and interact with learning materials that allowed for a tailored approach to learning. This study talks about the successful uptake of UDL in primary school settings, with some limitations observed in the availability to use technology, teacher training and willingness to use UDL, and the amount of autonomy that was allowed in the classroom. More importantly, this study recommends that due to the lack of studies on the implementation of UDL to enhance reading comprehension, that more research was necessary. The study affirms the use of UDL created positive outcomes in reading comprehension. On reflection of my research of these 5 studies, it has become apparent that UDL may well enhance reading comprehension, but more research is required. All mention the limitations of the implementation of UDL as being a lack of motivation and professional development in the use of UDL by teachers, the lack of economic resources, and the need for more accommodating and flexible curriculum. In retrospect, these explanations are relevant in my reference to my experience in practice. The school I was teaching at was a public school in a low socioeconomic area that faces funding challenges. The teaching staff, due to the current teacher shortages, were in the later part of their careers and would often talk about being time poor. The move towards inclusion in Australia, and therefore the use of UDL, has been introduced into the 8.4 version of Australian curriculum, with direct mention now in the latest version 9.0. With this in mind, and the federal government addressing the teacher shortages and workloads, a push for more funding and the teacher's readiness to accept change may lead to future success of reading comprehension in relation to the use of UDL principles. Further research into the use of UDL is required, but with all studies meeting with substantial success, the use of UDL to improve reading comprehension in primary schools appears worth exploring more into the future. Our review of research to what extent UDL could enhance reading comprehension in the classroom aligns with the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership's Australian Professional Standards for Teachers, requirement to know and understand literacy, APST 2.5. The use of UDL in the classroom, especially the ability to provide multiple means of engagement, representation and expression, enables teachers to differentiate our teaching to meet the needs of the student, APST 1.5, and use these strategies to engage all students, APST 1.6. By reviewing this research, we are directly challenging the teacher to demonstrate the knowledge of cultural background of our students, APST 1.3, and to help support student participation, APST 4.1. In engaging with each other here today in this professional learning to improve practice, we are also meeting our obligations under APST 6.2 and APST 6.3. I'd like to thank you all for attending today.